All right, guys, just have a few more of these recorded lessons, and then we'll be all together. So I'm looking forward to ending this. This is hard for me to do. We're in Unit 5, Lesson 6 in your book, and I want you to follow along as usual. We're talking about subtracting rational numbers. Rational numbers mean any number that could be written as a fraction. Decimals are rational numbers. Whole numbers are rational numbers. Integers are rational numbers. Any number that we usually deal with. What number is not a rational number? A number like the square root of 7 or pi. Those are not rational numbers, but the numbers we're going to deal with in this unit are all rational numbers. So we're talking about having a missing addend here. Do you know what an addend is? An addend is one of the things that you add. Those two things are called addends. And in this case, we know it's 247 plus something gives me 458. And the question is, what is that missing addend? Can you figure it out? Next one, same idea. We just have a decimal here and here. And then we have a fraction. Fraction, again, rational numbers. Can you figure out what those missing addends are? And how did you do it? Because then the next part of the question asks you to rewrite each of those addition equations as a subtraction equation. So can you solve for C equals using a subtraction? Then we're going to jump over to the next activity, talking about altitude here, expressions with altitude. Mountaineer is changing elevations. Write an expression that represents the difference between the final elevation and the beginning elevation, then write the value of the change. First one is done for you. So we're going to fill out this chart. First one says the beginning elevation is 400 feet. So positive 400 means he's 400 feet above sea level, or 400 feet maybe up that mountain. His final elevation is 900 feet. The question is, write an expression representing the difference between the final and the beginning. So notice they started with the final, the 900, and they're subtracting the 400. The difference between them is that change of 500. So you're going to fill in this and then this. If we looked at the next one, we have beginning elevation of 400 feet, final elevation of 50 feet. What's the difference between them? Well, let's see. It would be the final elevation minus the beginning elevation again. The difference between them would be 50 minus 400 is a negative 350. And what would that mean? Well, it would mean that he's gone down, or maybe it's a she, she's gone down 350 feet. Okay, so I want you to write each of those subtraction. Difference between, how far between is what we're looking for. What a subtraction means. What's the difference? What's the distance between those two things? All right, so fill out that table. I'll leave this out here for you if you want to try this. Are you ready for more? I like these kinds of puzzles. You're going to fill in the table so that every row and every column sums to 0. Can you find another way to solve this puzzle? Not required, but I will leave it up there. If you finish up, maybe a little extra credit. Activity 6.3, does the order matter? And we want to look at the order here. Is there a difference between 3 minus 2 and 2 minus 3? Remember what that minus means. It means the distance between them. And the sign is important. 3 minus 2, there's a distance of 1 unit between those two things. 2 minus 3, there's also a distance of 1, but it would be a negative 1. And you can figure this out with a number line. You could figure it out any way you want to. What's the distance? This next one is asking, what's the distance between 5 and negative 9? Again, if I went number line, 5 is here, negative 9 way down here. 5 to negative 9 would be 14 units. How about negative 9 to 5? Negative 9 to 5 would also be 14 units. But in that case, both would be negative, so it's a negative. So fill out this for me. How far between these numbers? And then, when you've calculated that, down at the bottom, what do you notice about the expressions in column A and column B? What do you notice about their values? How do they compare to each other? So answer those. And our lesson summary today, this is an important one. When we talk about the difference of two numbers, we mean subtract them. Usually we subtract them in the order they're named. For example, the difference of 8 and negative 6 is 8 minus negative 6. The difference of the two numbers tells you how far apart they are on the number line. What's the distance between them? How far apart? 8 and negative 6 are 14 units apart. because 8 minus negative 6 is 14. How far apart are they? Notice that if you subtract them in the opposite order, you get the opposite number. Negative 6 minus 8 would be negative 14. In general, the distance between two numbers, a and b, is, we use this little symbol. That means the absolute value, those two vertical lines means the absolute value of two numbers. Distance is always positive, and that's what that absolute value represents. The distance is always positive, no matter what the order. The difference can be positive or negative, but the distance between those two numbers would always be positive. So when you see the absolute value of 7, you would say that's 7. The absolute value of negative 7 is also 7. Absolute value literally means how far between 0 and that number on the number line. So if I were to look at, let's say the number, absolute value of 5, absolute value of negative 5, they're both 5 because they're both 5 units away from 0 on the number line. So absolute value, our new vocab word. All right, finish up this lesson, and then we're going to do some practice problems in the book.